Hey friend, Graham here from recordingrevolution.com. Let's talk about mixing background vocals today. Very important element of a lot of music. How do we get the vocals that aren't the lead vocal to find their place in the mix? And this is a huge part of mixing in general, is giving every track, every element its own place. It can't all be the star of the show. And that's a bonus tip for you, by the way. Anytime you're mixing, not everything in the mix can be the star. So that means not everything can be the same volume or be as upfront sounding. You have to play some things off to the side, down in the mix, or behind things using depth tricks. And while we don't want to minimize any track in the mix, saying that one sound or one element is less important than the other, we need to be upfront about what is the most important element in the mix and then what is supporting that element. Background vocals, while so important in modern music, rock, pop, country, hip hop, you name it, it is so important, it is not the star of the show. Generally speaking, it is not the star of the show. That is why they're called background vocals. They're vocals that should be in the background to support and feature and enhance the lead vocal. And so there's a lot of ways you can mix background vocals. There's no right way. Today, I want to show you one way to think about mixing background vocals that I think will give them a unique sound while also placing them in their own space. And specifically, this is interesting because in this section of the song I'm working on, there are no lead vocals. This is actually at the end of the song. The lead vocals are done. So these background gang vocals here aren't even competing with the lead vocal, yet I still wanted to give them their own space, their own sonic signature, so they don't sound like lead vocals. They sound clearly like background vocals, and people can appreciate them as such. Here's a section of the song. I'll play you the track together with everything done so you can get a feel for what the vibe is, and then I'll solo in on the background vocals and show you the processing and how I arrived at that sound and why, more importantly, I arrived at that sound. All right, so the four vocals in particular I'm focusing on today are these. There's two at the beginning and then two more come in. Okay, by themselves, if you take off the processing, they just sound like this. All right, real up front and dry, and more like a lead vocal in the sense that in the mix, they would sound like they're intended to be the lead vocal and they're closer to you. The drier something is, meaning the less reverb, delay, effects like that, the closer they sound to us in a three-dimensional space. So what I decided to do here was to give these an eerie, in the back of the room type sound, was to treat them and make them a little wetter than the lead vocal. Even though the lead vocal has some delay on it, in this song, I really wanted to make these more affected. And I'm doing that through reverb, delay, and then filters on both. So take a look at what's going on here. The first effect I've got these four tracks bussed to a track called Gang. And the first thing I'm doing is compressing. And this is less about the effect that I'm about to show you, but a very important element of mixing background vocals is trying to keep it all contained. Because in these vocals, their O's go all over the place, and sometimes they're louder, sometimes they're quieter. What I decided to do was take the volume when all the vocals are together, this volume here, and what I wanted to do was keep that at the same volume as the only two vocals by themselves. So I'm using a compressor, just a simple LA2A style compressor, to gently squeeze where it's really loud so that the volume is the same here without compression. Same volume, but it's louder when there's just one vocal. Compressor. So what I'm basically doing is turning up these opening O's so they're a similar volume by themselves to all of them together. That's just a simple leveling trick, just using a compressor to contain the volume so it's a little consistent. Now let's move on to the important elements in today's video. Reverb. I'm now slapping a reverb on these gang vocals here, and I'm using a wet and dry fader here so that it's 30% wet, okay? So it's primarily the dry signal with just a little bit of wet. No reverb. So what I've done is used a large hall reverb. And then what I wanted to do was dial down the top end. So I'm rolling off the top and everything below 8.8K with a high frequency cut. What's confusing about this reverb is it also has a low pass filter, which should be the exact same thing. But I just sort of play with these knobs because they both roll off top end so that it's making sure that the reverb sound isn't super bright. So this puts it back in a space a little bit. That's helpful. Now what I wanted to do was then also clean up or thin out the vocals a little bit. So I used EQ. This is the Abbey Road Red EQ. And so I've rolled off some low end and done a little bit of a mid-range boost here. Under the pop setting, it's a mid-range boost, a notch boost, to thin it out. So here's before. There it is, thinner. Without. So I don't want all of that low end because it doesn't need to sound super full because I'm going to place it far away. The mid-range boost is optional. That helped it cut through the mix a little bit better. But the important thing here is rolling off some of the low end so it's a little thinner. And then the final element is some delay. So I've already taken the compressed, reverbed, and slightly thinner vocals and now putting them through a delay. I'm using Echo Boy, and I just played around with an eighth note setting, and then I did the mix knob here. So again, it's mostly dry, a little bit of wet, and then I use the filters here to roll off a lot of top end, a little bit of low end. And then on this delay in particular, you can change the style of the delay. And I really like the telephone style because what it did is it helped out what I'm trying to do here with the filters, which is thin out the actual echo, thin out the actual repeat so that as it repeats or echoes, those echoes are a lot thinner and less full sounding, which helps, again, it not compete with the rest of your mix. So here's before. And there's the delay. So now it sounds like the vocals are pretty much in their own space. They're a little farther away, they're a little thinner, and they're bouncing off the walls a little bit. Versus and that not only is it more interesting than nothing on the vocals there, but it sits in the mix in a distinct space and it's not dominating. So the takeaways for today for you would be when you're thinking about mixing background vocals, again, I don't know where you're using them, how they sound, what you're going for, but the takeaways would be this. These background vocals, no matter what the song, for the most part, are probably not going to be as upfront and powerful as the lead vocal. It's pretty rare. And the goal then for them is to support the lead vocal. So at the very least, you want to tuck them down in volume a smidge from the lead vocal, but you might want to consider some reverb, some delay, some thinning out with EQ to make them a little bit farther away, a little bit less full, and a little bit less dominant. In the past, I've shown how even a simple high cut filter, which is also called a low pass, rolling off some of the top end of the background vocals can help them sit just underneath the lead vocal a little bit more. And that is the goal there, is to get these things to support the lead vocal. So hopefully today's video gives you some cool ideas to play with on your next song when working on background vocals. Now, if you're really on your game, one thing you can do is consider how to record background vocals in such a way on recording day that they already have some of these elements in place, and so there's less work to do in the mixing phase, where you're actually thinking ahead to the full arrangement of the song and thinking, where are these background vocals going to fit? What is their role in this song, and how are they going to support the song, so that you can actually treat the vocals or even use a different type of microphone or different mic technique or record in a different room for that matter in such a way that the lead vocals sound different than the background vocals and they complement each other beautifully. This is why arranging, which is a process, a step that you do before you even lay down a single recording or single track, is so vital to your final mix sounding the way it does. A good arrangement leads to a good mix every single time. So that's a huge reason why I'm a big fan of good arranging. In fact, arranging is one of the 6 critical steps to getting a radio-ready song. So there's recording, right? There's mixing. Maybe you've heard about that. Maybe you've heard of mastering. But what about arranging as a step? That's an entire step that gets overlooked in home studio productions because there's no producer helping you think it through. Well, I want to help you think that through and teach you what arrangement looks like. And I've got it all put together inside of a guide called My 6 Steps to a Radio-Ready Song. This is a simple PDF. It's absolutely free. You can download it right now. I'll put the link on the screen and in the description box so you can check it out when you got a free moment. Get it now. Read it when you got a moment. It's a very quick read, but it will give you not only a framework for how to produce music from start to finish in your home studio, but zero in on each of those 6 critical steps. And arranging is one of those. If you can get that step down, I promise you, your recordings will already sound better than the average home studio recording. And mixing will be 100 times easier because the song will mix itself, because it will be directing the listener from start to finish already. So you don't want to skip it. Grab your copy of My 6 Steps to a Radio-Ready Song guide. Free gift for you for hanging in there and watching the entire video. I know it's going to help you. It's helped thousands and thousands of my students who've already downloaded it. So go check it out and then email me and let me know what you think. Let me know what part of the guide has helped you the most. I think it'll be a sweet little tool for you when you're working on your next track in your home studio. That's it for today, my friend. Have a great day. Make some great music. Have fun. And I'll see you on another video real soon.